What is going on, everybody? Hello, hello, hello. I'm early today, which is good. What's up, Ryan? What's up, Craft? What's up, Snickles? Welcome in, everybody, to another Pixologic stream with this guy, IR Sculpts, aka Ian, aka the guy who does everything really complicated. How are you guys doing? Today, what's up, Matt? What's up, dude? Welcome in, guys. Okay, guys, so real quick. Today, we're going to get into some 3D printing stuff, but before we do, you guys know what's up. You guys have to register to the ZBrush Summit. Register, do it. What is up, Daisuke? Hello, everybody. All right, you guys have to sign up, register, compete, join me, and all that fun stuff. That's happening October 23rd through the 26th. There's going to be some really cool stuff happening all throughout the summit, so you're going to want to check it out. So make sure to register if you want to compete in the Sculpt Off, which happens on the 23rd. I'll be doing it. It's a 3-hour Sculpt Off. No theme yet, but we'll announce it soon enough. You're going to want to be there. So make sure to check that out. Also, be sure to follow, subscribe, like, all that good stuff to the Pixologic channel, because not only am I here, but, you know, Daisuke's here. We have Shane Olsen here, Spicer, AQ. We have so many people here, so many talented artists. List goes on and on. Make sure to follow, do all that good stuff. Never! I'm too scared! No! It is okay, though. It's okay. I'll be there. I'll be there to comfort. Well, let's do it. Yeah, we're going to rock the summit. Yeah, there's so many awesome, talented artists and great friends of mine who are going to be competing as well. It's going to be great to just see everybody there. Do it for the experience. If you don't do anything else, do it for the experience. It's such a fun experience. But just go to summit.pixologic.com. Daisuke, thank you so much for putting that there, and let's get into it. All right. Hello, what is happening, Art? How you doing? So today, last week, what we were doing was breaking up this model for 3D printing. If you guys are new to my channel, I make toys for a living. I work for Funko. I get to make toys for a living, and I take that knowledge and I bring it in here and share it with you guys. And I do most of everything for 3D printing, so that's what we're going to be covering. Now, some things, I do some illustration work from time to time, but mostly 3D printing. So if you have 3D printing questions, please ask, and I'll tell you how I would do it. Doesn't necessarily mean there's not another way to do it, but I will tell you how I do it. This is the model. Let's slap some basic color on there just so you guys can see it. So I'm going to be going through and breaking this apart and getting it prepped. I'm making a miniature version of this. So I want to basically, I don't know, a few inches tall. We'll see how that goes. What is up? Hello, hello, Eric. Hello, Shin. Welcome in. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, this model is actually pretty complicated. Pretty fun. But we're going to go through it. I'm going to start breaking it apart. And pieces like this, for example, I'm just going to leave them as they are. I'll probably separate them. Let's do that now. Because they're really simple, and you could just set them wherever you want. I like to do that sometimes. I don't key everything. I think keying everything sometimes gets a little pedantic and repetitive, and sometimes you can leave a little bit of self-interest to your model. So you can do something like, this is just the box, you could just set it on there and figure out where you want to glue it, which is always such a fun thing. So I'm going to go ahead and delete lower, and let's go ahead and split hidden. Whoop. So now that will be two different pieces, and let's take some of this meat off. This is a pretty heavy box. This is a 2.7 million box. So let's take a little bit of that meat off. Let's go ahead and I'm going to use, so I use a few plugins during my print process. And one of them, I use Dynamesh Master or Dynamesh Utility. You can get this at the Pixologic website under resources. And we're just going to go ahead and kind of lower this just a bit. So we're going to take it down to like maybe 1 million. Hold Control, and we're going to tap this part on the timeline. This is a history marker. So anytime I want to project detail back onto my sculpt, it's a good way to do it. So hold Control, tap it right there. And then we're going to go ahead and go to Plugin, and let's just Dynamesh, Zero Blur. Let's see what we get. We're just getting right into it. We're just jumping in there. All right, cool. Now I'm going to go over some of my settings here in a second, but let me just do the projection part real quick, and then I'll go over just a little bit more with what that is. Hello, Hulda, Harrieth? Is that how you say it? Welcome in. Thank you so much. As I'm already crashing. There we go. Projection sometimes takes a little bit of time. So there we go. And let's go ahead and just start saving this out. I save a lot during the print process. It's totally okay to do so. But how was everybody's week? What projects are you guys working on? Feel free to let me know. All right, so let me kind of explain what I just did. So what I had done before was I have a model that was subdivided that I ended up deleting the lower subdivisions. And then what I did was, like I said, we just tap right there. So at this point, here are some of my Dynamesh utility settings. I've played with this a little bit. We're going to come over here for a second. Naturally, when you open up Dynamesh utility, you'll see that this is pretty generic. Nothing is really selected. This is set to like a 2. There's no groups or polish turned on. I mainly don't mess with a lot of these settings, but one of the things I do is I turn off blur because it's naturally going to blur when a Dynamesh is, and I don't want to add to that. So I turn that down to 0. And then I open up additional options, and I turn on this feature right here. Use auto scaler. This is important because in ZBrush, when you Dynamesh, if you actually enlarge your model in the Dynamesh, it's actually going to, you'll get a better result because the way Dynamesh works is based on the size and the viewport. Oversimplification version of it. When autoscaler is turned on, it basically naturally blows your model up, Dynameshes it, giving you a little bit better result, and then it shrinks it back down to its original scale. So I highly recommend to turn that on. There's more black magic where that comes from, but that's essentially how I understand it. And then the rest I leave it alone, and then I just go ahead and hit Dynamesh. Now, of course, Control Tap to have our history. Dynamesh that, and you see it kind of blows up in my viewport, and then bring it back down. And now this is at 1 million, and then I just go ahead and go under Subtool, Project History, and that will take that history spot that we marked earlier and bring it back in. Now, just a real quick side note, if you put a project history indicator on one subtool and you don't turn it off, and you go to another subtool and hit project history, ZBrush is going to try to take that information from one subtool and bake it onto the other, and you can get some really weird errors. So anytime you're done with that and you get the result that you like, make sure to go and quickly turn that off. And you can see this was almost 2 million. Let's actually go to render, turn occlusion on so you can see a little bit of the depth. Let's actually turn on basic material. So this was before, and then this is after. So this is 1 million. So we took a few million polys off, and we still have good results. Trying to make my course model, or course model? Course model. Ooh, that's awesome. That is awesome. As you saw from my post earlier, I'm still figuring out if I want to texture it or not. Yeah, I did. It's looking really good. I definitely recommend trying to texture it, seeing what you can get from that. You know, worst case scenarios, you just don't like what you get, and then it's a learning experience. What's up, Frank? What's up, Jimmy is missing? Hey, Ian, good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, man. I'm good. I'm like kind of high energy today, I guess I had an energy drink. But I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been a fun week. Lots to do at work, so just got a chance to relax too. Love the shirt. Thank you. Yeah, it's an amazing shirt. How's it going? It's going. It is going pretty well. Could you possibly show me how to unwrap the model again? Thanks. Yeah, Frank, I'll get into that in a little bit. I kind of want to get through this portion. I really want to break this up for printing so we can get there. But remind me towards the end, and we'll definitely go over UV unwrapping one more time. Is that to make up for low energy last week? Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah, my last week, the week prior, my week was just like so intense that I was just dead tired. And this week, my week was just good. It was still busy, but I was able to recover a little bit better. Okay. You missed last week because you were on vacation? Yeah, it is, Nichols. It was an amazing gift. Thank you. Yeah, I sure will. Thanks. All right, cool. Hey, you're on vacation. That's awesome. Where'd you go? If you don't mind me being nosy. Okay. Let's do this. Let's actually drop some of the weight on here because this bad boy is grotesquely heavy. So let's do the same thing. We're gonna go ahead and come over here. I'm gonna delete lower. So what I want to do with this guy is I actually want to separate his arms. So I'm gonna go ahead and, because I have everything in different polygroups, I'm gonna select the arms, make them separate, and I'm gonna split hidden. So that's under subtool, split, and split hidden. So that's already going to allow me to have two different subtools to work with. Let's turn everything else off but what we need. And you know what? Let's split this guy too. Do I want to split that guy? I'm a little bit winging it on how I actually want to split this model up. I think to save me time, I'm going to split it like this. There we go. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the same process. So this is a very rinse and repeat where we're going to bookmark our history, go to Z plugin. I want to take this down to about, let's go 2 million. And then let's go ahead and Dynamesh that. Yeah, France, nice, man. You walk next to monkeys? That's so awesome. Separating arms, crunchy bone noise. Yeah. Talden, what's happening? How are you doing? Okay. Now let's go ahead and just project that history back. Doing well? Oh, that's good. I'm doing well myself. I'm ready for this, man. I was really excited all week. I wanted to actually split this model up a little bit more during the week, but I didn't get time to do so. So, we're doing it now. Dude, you look like you haven't slept in a century. It's been a while. That's what happens when you're a working artist. You spend your 10 to 12 hours a day sculpting everybody else's stuff. Try to find time for friends and family and personal projects, and you just sacrifice the little thing called sleep once in a while, and highly not recommended, but you'll do okay. Alright. I definitely don't recommend sacrificing sleep. So you see how on this subtool, this marker right here is red? This is what I mean. If we go back up our subtool list, and there's this little marker right here, so this is indicating that that's my history control spot. That's where, if I project history, it's going to pull from. And if I come to this marker here, you see how it's red? All you have to do if you forget to uncheck one side is just control check on this subtool. Just make sure you do it for each subtool. And if I come back here, you'll notice now that there's a red marker on this timeline and the other one is removed. So just be careful when you project history because it's real easy to forget to uncheck this. So my advice and habit is to always come up, control check right in the beginning before you start making those changes. That way you don't have to worry about anything else. Hopefully. Hopefully. Now this is 1.6 million. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to leave it at like around 2 and let's see what we get. I have a weird question. How I may keep my mesh clean without foldings crumpled mesh. Crumpled mesh. Okay. Do you mean like let me see if I can. I think I understand what you mean, but let's pull up a new sphere. Let's go ahead and make Polymesh 3D. Oop. So maybe like something like this, where it starts getting all funky on the inside. Is that what you're talking about? What's the sleep thing people keep referencing? That's yeah. Yeah, that's I don't know, Talden. What is this sleep thing people keep referencing? Okay. So there's two things you can do, Eric. This is kind of like my it's kind of like my advice on what to look out for, but when you're working with subdivisions and you're working with Dynamesh, everybody always asks that question, should I stick with Dynamesh or should I stick with subdivisions? A lot of times you'll get this crinkled mess when you're changing the silhouette of your model, but you haven't, after you've subdivided and you almost essentially haven't committed. Now, sometimes this happens on accident, but here I just really creased it and then I inflated it onto itself. So that means that you're going to get clipping internally. If you're going for 3D printing, this isn't a big deal, but if you are trying to keep something super clean and super and just nice and flowing so that it's not crunching on itself, the biggest tip I would recommend is to Dynamesh it and re-subdivide afterwards, which will clean that internal mess up. Because with subdivisions, at this point, I could smooth it and that mesh is still there and it's still going to recognize it. So the easiest thing I would say is if you have something like this that's really clipped and you want to keep that shape the way it is and you're not going to open it again, then Dynamesh it. Let's just do a simple Dynamesh real quick. And that removes that clipping on the inside. Now, if you are trying to do something that is subdivided, this is where it gets a little, you got to be a little bit more patient. If you're trying to have like a hole like that something is subdivided, that's where ZModeler will be your best friend. Because then what you could do is you can grab ZModeler, which is BZM, hover over a face and hold Alt, and then you can select surfaces like this. Boop. Then you could come in and QMesh Polygroup All, and you could push this back a few times, which now you're changing the silhouette, but you're still keeping your mesh very clean. So like if I wanted to make a mouth cavity, bloop, bloop, there we go. Let's kind of really push this a bit. Now, hold on. Okay, go. So as I'm changing the silhouette, say something like that, I'm still going to want to subdivide to clean this up because this is still pretty nasty geometry, but I want to keep that subdivision feel. So I will then go ahead and use Remesher and then just keep groups, and then I would Remesh after that. That might be a little high, but you know, something like that. Now you can play with that silhouette, but essentially once you finish getting the shape and form that you want, You're going to just kind of be aware of what's going on the inside. Now if I wanted to close this mouth, this is a really ugly mouth. Like, you know, I can mask off certain areas like such. And carefully start bringing it, maybe smooth some of that area a bit. But again, once you bring it close enough, say something like this, where we double, you can see here, it's still clipping a little bit. So depending on what you're going for, if you want this to be welded, Dynamesh it. Hopefully that makes sense, Eric. Morning from the UK! What is going on? Raytheon Studios, how you doing? 1:14 a.m. Oh my goodness. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining us at such a crazy hour. Yeah, no problem. Now here's the other thing too. If you want to separate this, okay, and you're subdivided, what I recommend is using topological and backface mask. So let's say we have this pinched and now I want to open this up, right? But with my normal move brush, I can't do that. I've pushed it all, I've masked it. You could try to isolate, but that gets crazy. So what you could do is go to brush, go to auto masking, and turn topological on. Notice I have a shortcut down here. And what you can start doing is slowly pulling just your brush size. And what topological does is it takes a single polygroup that you've selected, and so you could slowly start opening that back up. You can even go to auto masking, brush auto masking, backface mask, and then you can reclose it if you wanted to. Backface mask will be good for the closing more so than the opening, where topological allows you to kind of reopen that. Then you can kind of lightly smooth that to re-separate and then reshape that and get back in there. What I recommend doing is if you are working with geometry, if you are working with like a mouth and you want to keep it subdivided and you close it, I recommend keeping it open. You know, when you create your mouth bag that you have back here, because most of the time when you're animating, you're going to have like a mouth bag, right? It's to help with shadows so that the mouth looks natural. So what I recommend doing then is keeping it slightly open in a more neutral position. That way you can actually have more control with that. And it gives you just a little bit cleaner surface. And there you go. And there's a mouth as well. Not that I really meant to do it that way, but there. And that's how you sculpt the mouth. How do you make sure the back of the brush doesn't pull on the other side of the pinch valley? Is there a topological setting that prevents the brush from grabbing the other side? Parker, great question. Yes. So this setting right here, you have range and smooth. So with topological turned on, this range actually is the natural topological masking range. If you adjust this even lower, like let's say a 2, you'll actually get more refined. Let's turn this on. It'll actually, I'm like really trying to push it. It's really then at that point, opening it up a lot smoother. It's more controlled at that point. So that range right here, it's naturally set to 5, which makes it act a little bit more like the brush you want. But now you can adjust that down. You can also change your intensity a little bit, which I recommend going, and that will help you as well. That's one ugly mouth. Trim smooth borders, really bad for that. Want to edit? Yeah, absolutely no problem. I had a question on how artists create this insanely clean mesh with the edge being crisp. Is this done with polygroups? And can I link something for reference? yeah, so how artists keep really clean mesh, Polygroup is one way that I do it, because it just really helps so much with allowing us to control edge flow. I've mentioned it a few times, but notice how, I mean, this is not the cleanest mesh for a mouth because you have some poles here, but let's say I wanted to make this even better. I can control that with polygroups. So let's do that example first. So if I go to Subtool and go to Geometry and then go to Remesher, if I keep groups, I can even keep creases. We can come up here to Geometry, Crease Polygroups. And then what that will do is that will tell ZBrush, follow this as a guideline. You got to think of it like Remesher is super powerful, and it can do a lot. But because it could do so much, it's inherently kind of dumb. It needs help. So telling Remesher, do me a favor, keep these polygroups and keep these creases right where I have them, and then adjust on how much I want to have the edge flow wrap around. So remember, like this target polygroup count, this is per 1,000. So if I say it's 5, I'm saying I want a mesh of 5,000. If I say 2, I want a mesh of 2,000. But telling Remesher what to do benefits it so much. So if I go ahead and say keep creases, keep groups, now notice before the edge flows, it's kind of trying to follow, but I just did a blanket Remesher. Now, if I went ahead and let's go a little lower, let's go to 1. And I Remesh, now you can see that it's trying its best to have that edge flow go around. Now we can refine this a little bit more by using a brush called Remesher Guide. So if we go B, Z, and then R, what I can do is I could say, I want, let's turn off symmetry for this. I want to protect this area right here. Oh, that was bad. You don't have to go too crazy. What's that doing? Why is that putting that way back over there? Okay. My Remesher guide is acting a little funky. Okay. Well, normally I would say let's just try it. It's being a little weird for me. But let's say I wanted to wrap around this way and then Remesh. That should now tell Remesher, look, kind of follow this, and you can see it's trying to do that as best as it can. The other thing that I recommend that you do, and yes, George, it is being recorded, so you can always come back at another time. This link is safe. Okay, great. Let me click it real quick. Oh, cool. Okay, give me 1 second. I'll take a look at that. So, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So Remesher Guide, that's one way to help do it. Another way I like to do it is to separate polygroups by using Polygroup It. And I've showed this a few times, but if we go to Polygroup It, you can actually do a Polygroup It from Paint. And so if I wanted to control this even more, I would grab my paintbrush and fill the subtool with, let's say, white. So let's go Color, Fill Object, switch it to black. Now we'll do, of course, you know, maybe have a good subdivision level. Just something like this. Say I want this edge loop to come here like that. Make it nice and dark. And then from here, what I would say is go ahead and polygroup from paint. Give it a second, and it will take the paint and it will take the difference between the two and hopefully make a different polygroup. Of course, let's back this up. Let's do a much better job. Let's subdivide a few times. Now this method is dependent on how clean the paint you do. I'm like throwing everything at you guys, by the way. And yeah, it is being recorded, so you guys will be able to have a better success with it. Plug in, polygroup it, polygroup from paint. Oh, I know what's going on. I made a mistake. You want to delete, it always kicks it to the lowest subdivision. So you're going to want to delete lower, polygroup from paint. That's my mistake. Yeah, it's kind of a mouth. What is going on, TL101 Art? How you doing? So, once you got your basic shape and you're ready to ZRemesh, go ahead and, you know, have a good subdivision level. Just have a good, like, 200,000. Paint it. Now you can see here I have a different polygroup that then I can turn around and just quickly say keep groups, ZRemesh, and now it will take that and help clean it up for me. Hopefully this makes sense. So see now, the edge flow is going around the cavity that I have created. And if I turn on dynamic, and let's just uncrease everything because we don't need it. Now you can see that I have different polygroups. And all of that is controlling my edge flow. And now I don't have a pole in the corner of the mouth where I did have the pole. So this is how we keep our groups as clean as possible. We make sure that we keep it as low. Like this is only 1,000 poly. We keep it really low, but we also tell ZRemesher what it is we want to do. And what we want to do is have the edge flow work in our benefit. If we have, you know, those weird nasty poles, let's back it up for a second, like here in this mouth, that's going to fight our sculpting against the geometry. Even if we were to subdivide up a bunch of times, it's usually going to fight us. So by either painting, because you know what you could do as well if you wanted to, was just hold Control, paint a section, and then Control W. That'll give you a new mask. If you do that, and then ZRemesh, it's going to tell the edge flow to work around that poly group. And if you set up your groups in your benefit, kind of wrapping around something like a mouth cavity where it's coming around this area and working for us, then now the geometry is going to be really good. So when we subdivide up, now we're going to have a much cleaner surface to work with that won't fight when we sculpt on it. Just give us really nice clean. Of course, now I can't sculpt, but so hopefully that works for you guys. Do you Dynamesh early, then sculpt on topology? I Dynamesh. I'm a Dynamesher user where I use Dynamesh as I'm changing the silhouette. So for example, if I'm making a head, or when I was making this rock creature, I was using Dynamesh for everything because it's easier for me to work with and I keep it at a really low subdivision. But once I've made the shape I'm going for, whether it be a head, a mouth, you know, the body, whatever, once I get the main silhouette where now I want to add detail, that's when I stop using Dynamesh and I start ZRemeshing, because subdivisions hold detail better than Dynamesh will, ultimately. So I use Dynamesh until I'm satisfied with the result that I want, and then I ZRemesh. That's a preference that's completely up to you guys. So I've seen models that are completely Dynamesh that are all the way to the final, and then they ZRemesh, project details, and then they just refine. It's really up to you on that, whatever you're more comfortable with. For me personally, I choose to use Dynamesh all the way up until the silhouette is finalized, and then when I move into secondary forms, that's when I go ZRemesher. Okay, for the sculpt, by the way, this was what the link was. I had a question of how many hours create. So, yeah, so creating. So if we take a look at this tree, for example, this tree, the edge flow, you can actually see it. This is the topology right here. Now these, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 different cones. So really it's just the one cone, but you could see the edge. You could see the edge loop right there, our base cone, and then our final edge loop. And it's just reshaped. This is just super, super low. So what are you saying is I should ZRemesh my model? I recommend it, yes. But yeah, see, this is super clean. And because this is really stylized, you know, now I would argue that these rocks right here are much higher resolution, but I guarantee that they're gonna ZRemesh this, and then they come through with your looks like orb brushes, and they're just refining the details, H polishing it. You can get this result Dynameshed, keep it really, really low, ZRemesh it, and then clean it up. So that would be the process. So like for this rock, for example, how I would tackle that rock. Is I would go ahead and just Dynamesh this right out the gate. So geometry, Dynamesh, say 128. Use H polish, so BHP. And maybe clip curve, right? Just kind of clip it. Let's just get something like this real quick. Now we'll just do this kind of, we'll do this kind of fast. But if we had something like this, right? H polish is your best friend here, especially if you're just going for quick shapes. So with Dynamesh, I can get my silhouette going really quickly. I can distort it. If I don't like it, I could Dynamesh real quick. Maybe flip off some areas. Something like that. Dynamesh it. Right, until I'm pretty happy with the result. And then from here, what I would do, increase my Dynamesh just a little bit more. So now I have my basic rock shape. Maybe try to refine it a bit more, just to give me something, but I'm still at like 112,000. And then once I'm happy with said result, control tap on my history. From here, what I would recommend is maybe just masking off this section, control W, give me a different polygroup here, just to have something. And then I'm going to go to ZRemesher, keep groups. Let's try 5. Let's go ahead and ZRemesh it. Bloop. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Something like such. And then I would go to my geometry, divide a couple times, and then go to subtool, project history. Go ahead and project that, and you'll see all these edges. Now before, after, a little bit sharper, and now you could refine that. You could take your H polish, you can refine that a little bit more. Now you can work and really focus on cleaning this up. If you have stuff like the orbs brush, which I have the orbs brush kits, you know, you could take orb flatten, for example, come in here. Now you can really just start kind of refining these little areas, making it nice and clean. You could take your pinch brush, Pinch brush, sharpen those areas. So if you can keep it really low, it's only at 86,000, and you can have something pretty quickly. Which one's better, flattening or polish? Honestly, I do both. I prefer to use H polish. I think it responds a bit better, but personally, flatten works just as well. But the combination of the two, I have H polish I fall on the sword on a lot, and I love that. In conjunction with Trim Dynamic, I really wanted to carve this section out here. Trim Dynamic is really good. But again, you know, once I get to the Dynamesh version, not Dynamesh, when I get to the subdivided version, I'm really now not trying to change the silhouette as much as I am just trying to refine it and make it look a lot better and a lot cleaner. Little details I would do, tertiary details like cuts, you know, that's when you really get to higher subdivision. If you want to start carving in at that point, you know, that's when you would start working with that. Yeah, so I have a model I'm trying to 3D print, but I'm not sure what scale my model should be. Michiki, hopefully that's how you say it. Yeah, that's kind of, it's kind of up to you. Depending on what you're going for, if you're doing a miniature, you want to be in the range of 24 to 32 millimeter. If you're in the range of small prints, you know, maybe 50 mil to 100 mil is a good starting spot. So, you know, up to you on the scale. A bit of Trim Dynamic for breaking the lines as well. Yep, absolutely. I love Trim Dynamic. It's great. So that's how I approach every model. Just like this rock, I Dynamesh, I get my shape, I make some polygroups, I ZRemesh, I project my history detail, and then I start cleaning it up. And then you can get something pretty quickly. And of course too, you just push your model as far as you need to go. Also, yo, what's up, Brimstone? So yeah. It's all in really what it is you're trying to achieve. The best part about art is that it's completely up to you. Now, if you're doing it for a job, and of course you have concept art, you obviously want to follow that. But the pipeline doesn't have to be too complicated. If you want to use Dynamesh and then go into ZRemesher, which is what I do, it works out really well. You blend stuff together. If you are the type that wants to stick solely with, you know, ZRemesher, then maybe look into using ZRemesh by Union. So there's just tons of processes. The best part about ZBrush is like Photoshop, like any other program, when you have a lot of options, that means you have a lot of control over your pipeline. So if you're somebody who wants to just create, then, you know, I recommend the Dynamesh to ZRemesher pipeline. It's just clean and it works. Is Trend Dynamic only in the full version of ZBrush? Says Bunny Bunsworth. I don't remember, actually. I don't know if it's in Core. I can load up Core. Do I have Core installed? I had to reinstall my machine. Do I have it? Let me say real quick. Before I make promises I can't keep. Okay, I don't have Core installed. I'm not sure. I can pull up the answer for that. Nope. Let's see. Brushes in ZBrush. In ZBrush Core. Okay, so if you go to Docs Pixologic, this should probably get you a lot better results. Trim Dynamic is in ZBrush Core. Yay! Thank you, Daisuke. Because I pay $10 a month version, I don't see it. Oh, yeah. This is your brush lineup. ZBrush core. So you should have clay, buildup, mask pen, standard, paint, select rec, lasso, transpose, pinch, trim dynamic, dam standard, H polish, move, inflate, IMN primitives, and smooth. Should be your main brushes. What I would recommend is if you don't see a brush that should be there, it could have accidentally been removed, or just didn't install properly. So maybe try reinstalling it just to ensure that it's a clean install. It could have just been a random glitch at that point. And if you have any other further issues, try to reach out to somebody with support to help you out because that brush should be there. Cool. Oh, what software do I use to show my keyboard? I just Googled OBS keyboard, like OBS keyboard layout, and I can't remember. I installed it a while ago. But I just Googled OBS keyboard layout and I got something pretty cool. Where can you see my work? Absolutely. Here, 1 second. Boop. I have a link. You guys can. I have a link right here. Yeah, not a problem, buddy. I also have a Discord as well, guys, so if you'd like to join my Discord. It's a very just friendly community for artists to come in, hang out. You can hang out with other artists. You can ask questions about pretty much anything art related, and somebody in there will answer that question. But yeah. Okay. So now we have this. Going back to this model. So that's the process that I'm repeating with this guy right here. We're going back to Dynamesh now when we're prepping for 3D print. And the reason we're going back to Dynamesh is because it's to ensure that everything is watertight so that it prints solid. Remesher, while it's great for holding detail, doesn't always bode well for trying to make sure that your model will print watertight. So we're going back to Dynamesh and projecting the details back on it so that it stays nice and clean. It's a older workflow process, but it's what works for me. So that's what you see me do in here. And actually I already did this one. We don't need to do that one. Let's stick with the hands. And for the hands, I'm actually going to go ahead and separate them even further so we can repeat this process again. So we're going to go ahead and bookmark history by Control Tap, Z plugin. I'm using Dynamesh Master. If you want to install that, just Google it. It's free, but it's what works out pretty well. But you can also use Dynamesh Utility. That works as well too. Ooh, BS input overlay in is using. Oh, thanks, Daisuke. Lots of people with different expertise in the Discord are all willing to help. Absolutely, which I appreciate. It's blown up into this amazing community. So if you guys are looking for a place to kind of stretch your legs, and especially if you're new, there's a lot of help and a lot of resources. And if you have any questions, you can tag me, or you can tag, well, you can tag me. I don't want volunteering about, but you can tag me for sure. And if I don't answer it in time, somebody else will. So it's always a great community. I appreciate all of you guys who hang out in there. Okay, now that we got that, let's go ahead and project our history back onto this model. Boop, boop. All right. I will say that prepping for 3D print is pretty mundane. So when working with 3D printing, prepping, take your time. Don't feel like you have to rush the process. it definitely is, it is a little bit of a labor. I have 0 expertise. I'm still new at learning the ways of ZBrush. Well, you're doing great. All you have to do is just keep practicing, study a little bit of anatomy, keep practicing. You're doing great. Hi-oh, there it is. All right, and let's just project that detail back. Now here's something too. Let me go back here real quick. This is an easier model to showcase it. Because you know how we were, oh, whoopsie. Okay. So you know how we were talking about clipping earlier? Here's a great example of clipping. So I have 2 models with different polygroups, and I've shoved one into the other, right? So this is why we're going back into Dynamesh, because each one is individually on its own. So when I go ahead and Dynamesh this, so we use, okay. Now when I go ahead and open this up, you'll see that it pretty much cut out that center, it cut out that clip and merged the 2 together, and now it's welded together. And then when I project my history, it's going to project all the history on the surface, and it shouldn't project any internal mesh because it's not there anymore. It doesn't exist. This way we get the detail that's on top by still having a really nice internal structure on the inside. So it just removes all that. So that's also why we're going back into from ZBrush to Dynamesh in order to have a clean print. It's also personally just easier for me to work with, so that's why I do it. Now what we will do is we need to, I personally think, break this up a little bit more. I'm new too. I mainly want to sculpt and print Zelda figures. Woo-wee! That's awesome. Well, guys, well, especially for you, Bunny, you're going to be able to print this one, because I'm going to be giving it away to you guys in order to print and have fun. Have a neat little mini version out, and hopefully I'll get it out this week officially so you guys can have something before Breath of the Wild 2 even releases. Because this was fan art based on the trailer. But I would say start with the Bokoblin. Bokoblins are fun, easy creatures to sculpt. Any version, really. Okay. So we're going to now start separating some of this. So we're going to go ahead and split hidden. So I have a shortcut for that, but to split hidden, just go ahead and... Nope, I lied to you. Subtool, split hidden. Goblins are general really. Yep. But you gotta start somewhere. I'd say always start with a creature. If you're new to sculpting, don't start with a humanoid or human character. I find that to be a little bit hard because people are so used to seeing people that we understand the imperfections before, but we don't realize it. Like, people, even who aren't artists, they'll realize that that doesn't look like a person. So if you start with a person, especially if you're new to ZBrush, then there's already a lot of pressure on top to get it right. So I always say do something that's a little bit more fantasy, like a goblin, or, you know, just a ridiculous, you know, like lizard creature, or even like a spider or something, because it's easier to just learn the program, make something that's going to be kind of cool, but won't be judged as harshly out the gate, which is more user friendly, especially in the beginning. So I definitely recommend starting starting with a creature, because we don't see creatures all the time unless we're an expert in that field. So it's much easier to get away with. And if something's wrong and you get a critique, it won't be obvious to everybody. So that's my advice. I'm not new, but I always can learn more. Absolutely, that's the best way to think about it. Mainly want to sculpt characters for games and rig afterwards. Nice. Well, you're well on your way. Just Talt? Just Talt? I'm drawing a blank on that. Okay. So now we have this separated from this. I'm breaking this part up now because I have a feeling I can actually get away with a lot more here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to angle this like here. I'm going to get the select lasso by holding Control Shift, select lasso. I'm going to make sure that I select this right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Shift A. Nope, not Control Shift A. Yep, Control Shift A. I don't know what happened there. And that's going to, let's back that up for a second because I had something else happen. So when I make this selection, holding Control Shift, I'm going to just go ahead and kind of isolate the area that I want. It's going to hide the rest. And if I hit Control Shift A, it's going to bring back the other things that were still left as an option, but keep everything else hidden, so then I can kind of go through, hit select rec, and I can isolate the rest of that a lot easier. So if you have things that are separate polygroups and you need to make a quick selection, that's the way to do it. And then I can go ahead and split hidden. And I just repeat this. Let's see, first sculpt was a arcane, a nice. I was going to sculpt a Robusta first, but I'm going to do enemies, then work my way up to champions. Oh, that's so awesome, Bunny. And anime characters look like aliens until they're done. Yeah. If you guys want to sculpt anime characters, you guys have to watch Daisuke. Because that's what he does, and they look great. You're a very explaining guy and considerate of your fans, and I'm one of them. Congratulations for your wonderful work, art, and for your education and attention to people's doubts as much as possible. Of course, after all, you can't serve everyone in such a short time that Pixologic allows you, nor stop work for a long time, but congratulations. Lewis, thank you so much, dude. That is such kind words, man. That means a lot. To be real with you guys, I enjoy teaching so much. And I love being able to share my knowledge. And while I have a lot to learn myself, if I can just, even if I only had 5 minutes to share my knowledge, that's one of the things I love the most about the art community. This community has been so kind to me. I constantly want to give back. So thank you guys for being so amazing and just wonderful people. I really appreciate it. Start with a Cthulhu! No one will judge. This is true. Start with a Cthulhu. I did a Cthulhu here. What do we do? I think I did a Cthulhu like 3 months ago. The whole thing greater than the sum of the parts, and the feeling you get when something is... Oh, okay. Alright. Gotcha. Uncanny Valley. Yep. Sakaki is even better, and he's only in Japanese. But you don't need to understand the language to do it. I've watched a lot of Sakaki's videos. A lot. I'm still going over them. Because I have a big anime piece that I'm planning on doing. I want to do my own take on a Demon Slayer piece. Let me know if you guys want to see what that piece is going to be. Because that's a piece I want to do next. I have not seen the statue of this yet. I hope it's not done yet, but this is the piece I want to do. If you guys want to see that, let me know. Because I love Demon Slayer. I love it a lot. Nope. I have not watched Demon Slayer. What? What? That's okay. I haven't watched Attack on Titan more than 2 episodes, so that's fair. You want to see it, Ryan? You want to see it? Okay. All right, let me see if I can find the wallpaper that I downloaded a little while ago, which will showcase the concept art that I want to get. Now, for those of you who are new to sculpting in general, if you are wanting to start sculpting anime, be kind to yourself, because anime is a lot, in my opinion, is a lot harder to get right because of all the subtleties within the sculpt itself. The facial expressions are, because you got to retain that 2D look from all angles while still bringing it to life in 3D. But here, let me see if I can find it real quick. I also have not watched Demon Slayer, despite you recommending it to me like 5 months ago, 100 times, 3 times a week. Kamara! It's okay. Do you have any suggestions for 3D printers that are affordable and user-friendly? Yes, I do. Mars, all the way. That's resin, by the way. If you are looking for FDM, which I even recommend over resin, I recommend people learn FDM over resin. Check out the Ender series. They are great machines. They are reliable. They come pretty much out of the box. Once you put it together, it's a great machine. They're only a few $100 US, and you can get a lot out of them. So for FDM, Creality, Ender series. For resin, I recommend the Elgu series. Very great printers. I know there's other ones like Anycubic, but I haven't messed with a whole lot of them, so I can't speak on what I don't know. But I definitely recommend. Okay, so Demon Slayer wallpaper. This is how I found the concept art. Yeah, look at that. There it is. All right. This is the piece that I'm going to be attempting soon. You didn't need to do that. There we go. Okay. This is it. So it's going to be Tanjiro with Mexico jumping out of the box. Action pose. He's in a, I believe, a defensive position. This piece is going to be something that I'm really, really excited about. I don't know if I will start it here. I may attempt this a few different times before I get something that I like, but this is the piece I'm going to be attempting. I haven't seen a sculpt of this like this. I've seen a lot of different pieces or different sculptures of others, but as a duo, I have not seen this one yet. Doesn't mean it's not there, but this is it. So I've actually been putting this piece off for about a year now. But it will also be, it's also a request from a good friend of mine for her birthday, so I told her it's more going to be like Christmas. But that is it. I love my Saturn, yeah. I tried FDM and I started, felt like I was rebuilding it every print. Yeah, FDM, you learn a lot. I'm more of a Final Fantasy type. Ooh, I love Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy X is one of my favorites. I have a Saturn currently on its way, so keen to get it new printing. Oh, yes. Let's see. I did my first print with the Elgu Saturn. Super easy. Super pretty print. Nice, yeah. If you primarily work as a freelancer in the game industry and get a full-time contract offer at an animation house, does taking the job block you from getting more jobs in the industry in the future? That's a great question. That is a great question. And it is contract dependent. So, what do I mean? I work in the toy industry, so I'm going to clarify that real quick. I work in the toy industry. For those of you who don't know, I am a digital sculptor for Funko. So I work with toys, but essentially I did freelance for the last year during the start of the pandemic. I used to work for the film industry, and I then moved into freelance, and I did that for a little over a year. With freelance, you obviously have more options with who you do business with, but as soon as I got hired at Funko, I signed an NDA, and they want your full attention as much as possible. Most studios, if you're going to get studio work, are going to want your full attention. I personally don't have time for taking on freelance, but if the contract does state that they don't want you working with competitors, then you're going to have to be aware of who's a competitor within your industry. So some contracts do that. I signed an NDA with another company when I was freelancing that had that in there, and I ended up talking to them and clarifying what that meant. And ultimately, that's my advice to you. If you are freelancing and then you start working with a company more full time, and they have you sign your NDAs, ask them what something is. Have them clarify what portion of that NDA, because if there is a clause that says, cannot work with competitors, what is a competitor? I work in toys, so in my contract, if it said don't work with competitors, then I'd have to understand that other companies like Hasbro, Mattel would be out of my realm while I worked for Funko. So those are little things that you kind of want to research before signing. Have them clarify. Talk to the person in charge who sent you that application or sent you that contract and see what they mean by it. It's usually pretty cut and dry from my personal experience, but if you are getting hired with a studio, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of time to do freelance anyway, so that kind of helps there too. But, oh my god, great idea. You're a master of picking projects for print. Fire! Alright, cool. Alright, you guys want to see that? That's probably going to take a while, though. I would love to see the process of that. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it then. That's my next piece, guys. That's my next piece. The next week, that's what we're going to start. Probably going to start with some mannequins and some other stuff. So, yep, that's what we're doing. There it is. You guys got to hold me to it, okay? That's what we're doing. I'm not going to chicken out. I'm not scared of it at all. Let's see here. Let's see. More power to you. That's going to be an awesome piece. Can't wait. Absolutely. Checked a load of money at Formlabs Form 2 back in the day. It's never let me down, and I can count the fails on one hand. Yes, that's why I want a Formlabs as well. Look out for non-compete clauses, I think. Yes, exactly. The non-compete clause, it's pretty common, but look out for them. Have them clarify what that means. Because, if non-compete for them means, they just don't want you taking on freelance, have them explain it. Ask them what that means. Hey, what's going on, Odon? How are you doing? It's going, man. It's going. No offense, but I find the pop figures the worst things humanity. It is okay, man. It is okay. I personally love them. I think they're adorbs, cute. Something for everyone. That's the slogan. I was wondering that because most game studios ask for previous game published in the last 5 years. Yeah, they do, don't they? Well, apply anyway. I will be completely transparent. Every job I applied for studio work has had some pretty crazy asks for new artists. A junior artist is more likely to have 1 or 2 years experience, and that might be from college if you went. A lot of companies, even outside of the industry and other companies I've worked for some of you don't know, I've worked for aerospace before, they would put up the most ridiculous asks of a person, and it was a scare tactic. It was just mainly to see who would apply and who wouldn't. If you're confident in your skill and you got a good portfolio that showcases that you could do the job, who cares if they say, we want to see what previous games you've published in the last 5 years. Just apply, because you never know. Just get your application out there. Don't worry about the details. If you are somebody who's trying to look for work, get in, apply to those positions. The worst case that happens is that they tell you no. But you would be surprised how many times people are not applying, and you might be the person who applies. So I've seen the list of things. I've applied to a couple game studios before I got hired at Funko, and they were asking some really crazy stuff. I applied anyway. I at least got an interview. I didn't get hired. It didn't work out, but I got the interview. The interview is 90% of experience on getting a job, because for the most part, most studios are not going to want you to know the job 100%. They're going to want to know that you can be worked with, that they can work with you, and that you can do the job mostly. There's always going to be some training that gets in. Nobody, they're not going to hire you and say, make the game, you're on your own. You're going to be introduced to a team. They're going to show you their pipeline, how they work. They're going to grant you access to assets and other things. They're going to kind of, that's why you take an art test. That's why they kind of make sure that your portfolio matches, what you're saying you can do. So just be upfront and honest. Apply anyway. What's the worst that happens? They say no, then no big deal. Damon Long 25, what is up, dude? He said it now in the stream. He's got to do it. Yep, got to do it. You guys got me ranting. I love it. I wish I knew ZBrush when I was in high school. Please tell me. Does money motivate me? No, money does not motivate me. No, money is helpful, but it is not the main motivator. No, you're totally fine. Curious, was pen display you are currently using? Yeah, I have the Epic pen display right here. I was using it earlier, going over some notes. And apparently when you hit Control-Shift-A, that opens pen display, which is funky, so, maybe I'll have to change that setting a little bit more. But yeah. Okay. Can you tell us some things you worked on while you worked at Funko? I cannot at this time. Everything I've done is under NDA, so. But when I can, if you follow me on my socials, when I can, then I can, but not at this time. That's like I'll be honest, like it's sometimes a little sad. It's like, man, I wish I could, but that's okay. Oh, you think? Oh, I'm using a 22-inch Cintiq, which is pure preference. You don't need it. It's just I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4". I got a wingspan of 12 feet, so I like the room. Okay. Still breaking this apart a little bit more. There we go. Let's go ahead and split hidden. Yeah, this is the reason why I teach it to high school students. Nice. As a teacher and freelancer, I find there's a stigma against teaching in the industry. How do you deal with it? That's interesting. This is probably going to sound like the worst answer possible, but I just don't care what other people think. I know there's that saying, people that can do and people that can't teach. That's just BS. You know what I mean? Like, teaching is such a significant part of life and the art community that, if somebody wants to make fun of me or tell me that I'm not worth it because I teach people, then I just ignore them. I don't care, because the secret is that teaching helps you learn better, because you may not understand something 100%, but you get the general idea. And then somebody who doesn't understand anything comes along and says, hey, how do you do blah? You explain it to them and you're able to break it down. you'll start seeing things that you didn't even realize were there, and it's only going to help improve your own knowledge. So I encourage so many people to teach because it's just going to help you as well. And there's this joy of watching somebody who doesn't get it. And when it snaps and they clicks in their head, it's the best experience ever. So who cares? Like at the end of the day, if somebody wants, walk away from the person who makes a big deal out of it. Me, I love it. I'm proud to be a ZBrush instructor. I'm proud to be part of such an amazing stream team that can push knowledge forward and help others improve on a day-to-day. So that's what I say. Yeah, I'm not going to pull punches on that. That's it. That is me. You're an adjunct professor myself. That's awesome, Amanda. That's awesome. Michael Pavlovich told me there's both those who can't do teach, saying, and if you can teach it, then you know it by the book. Yeah. Honestly, Pavlovich is probably one of my early inspirations to start teaching. And if he's ever watches this, or if you ever watch him, you can tell him. I wish I could teach people since I'm horrible at explaining things, but I know how to do it. Yeah, I get it. That saying is dead. You can't claim mastery until you've taught and your students has succeeded on your own level or surpassed you. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, Joseph Just is amazing. Yeah, good point. I had to cover something in 3ds Max and I didn't get 100%. Found out I knew more than I thought, then picked up more information. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. You know, because at the end of the day, that's all about just getting better. It's improving against what you were yesterday. So if today you're not as good, then the goal is tomorrow just be just a little bit better. The only person you should ever compare yourself to is you, and just be a little bit better. Okay, let's see here. I need to break this apart just to kind of see what we have going. So if you hit Shift X, that kind of explodes everything into its different subtools. And so I can tell you right now, this is pretty good. I'm going to click this one. Shift X puts it back. Solo this out. Okay, so this is the big piece that I'm actually, I'm going to say it, I'm actually afraid won't print the way I want it to print. So I think what I'm going to do is separate the ladder and then maybe separate the bottom piece and print this upside down as like one piece. I think that might be the best way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and isolate all of these parts. I'm going to hit select rec and grab each one of these. Because again, I can take this ladder and I can separate it as a single piece, and I can print that as one spot. So we'll go ahead and split hidden, and then we'll do the same thing underneath here. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that trick I told you about. I'm going to come here and I'll isolate this area like that. Control Shift A. Okay. Perfect. Now that actually got messy. Just going to tap everything. Shift Z, that's handy. Oh yeah, Shift X type. Yeah, Shift X is really handy. It helps you it helps me kind of identify where things are a little bit different. And then I can kind of, from there, see what pieces are still need to be dealt with. So I'm thinking that this could actually print pretty well like this. And that could be a separate piece. So we'll... Oh, no. I hit project instead of split. It's not good. There we go. There we go. Cool. Hola! Hey, what's up, Hairy Mandibles? Dude, I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time. Let's see here. Let's catch up. Sometimes I have a little voice inside that says I should be teaching less and just doing it as a side thing. Since I'm splitting mostly 50% teaching, 50% freelance, and doing mentorships online with people like Popovich and Paul Gabry. Wow. Yeah, you are one busy dude. Honestly, if you love it, which it sounds like you do, if you love it, you know, like, do what you love. It's hard to, like, for me, I wish I could teach more, but I also like that I teach here, and then I like that I'm able to do my 9-to-5er, and I have a couple other things in the fire that I'm thinking about jumping into, but I don't want to take on too much too quickly. So I've slowed down a little bit because I used to make a lot of YouTube videos. I used to stream all the time, and that just got overwhelming. So for me, it was about taking care of myself first, and then what comes next. So being able to be on here definitely helps create that teaching aspect. Hopefully, some of the things that I have in the fire work out, but I'm not rushing it. But yeah, I get it. Wow, that model. Yeah, this model's insane. Had that experience the other day. Did a skull, ended up looking like a monkey. The next day resculpted it and looks okay. Yeah, right? It happens. Can ZBrush be your wife? I feel like I'm married to ZBrush. I love the program. It's one of my favorite programs on the planet. Not even exaggerating. Those of you who know me a little bit more personally know, like, this program I fell in love with. So I want to say yes. Yes, it does. Okay. Let's turn everything on, because here's the full model in its glory. And now we're going to go ahead and Shift X one more time. I think I need to save it, because I haven't saved in a while. Yeah, it is really awesome. Okay. So this little thing down here is actually keys. I have some pre-made keys that we made last week here down at the bottom. So those don't need to be turned on just yet. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start applying some stuff. So I actually think that this could be welded to this piece right here. So let's move this up. And let's go ahead and merge this part down. So let's go to merge, which is over here on the side palette. Merge down. Say OK. So this will be one piece. Now, we got to cover this main issue, which is this hole right here. We have a couple of different options that we can do. If I were to leave that, that would be kind of cool, but I'd have to print it something like at an angle, and that might be problematic. Problematic. He's a problem. So what we could do is actually take our IMM primitives. Let's go BIT. And let's take a simple Q cube. I'm gonna draw that out. Shrink this down, kind of expand it a little bit, and we're gonna do a little bit of a fill technique. Because this will be so small, those holes are actually going to be very small. I was going to go a larger print, and I think I will at some point, but for right now, I'm going to do something more like this. Let's kind of push this in a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm actually going to be filling this space up a little bit. So now that gap will be covered, and I can blend this with putting some texture and stuff on there as well. Is that why you're always making out with your computer? That is, yeah. That's why when I get the tablet coming up, I'm just like, hello. Also, I primarily do modeling texturing for games. That is what I teach, other than Unreal Engine 4 for content creation. Nice. It's not necessary jack of all trades. You know, it's interesting actually. I've heard that saying, jack of all trades, master of none, although you have it written as master of one. In any industry, toy industry, game industry, VFX I'm sure as well. You gotta know quite a few things. So, you know. Although my job, I guess I'm a little bit lucky, because my job is, I really just need to know ZBrush for the most part, because I just do sculpting, mainly. But I've learned other programs as well, at a necessity, because I've worked other jobs. I worked for Coach.com a little while ago, did a project with them that's still under NDA, but it was fun to have worked with them, and we did stuff for animation, so, you know. This industry, you wear a lot of hats sometimes. So the more you know, the more you could be beneficial to your team. So if you see, look right there. And what we could do too is I could isolate this section right here. And then what I could also do is turn on backface mask. And let's not do that. That might rip it apart. Just widen that a little bit. So I can hide some of these imperfections by changing the sculpt itself just a little bit. I can, like, you know, over here, kind of broaden that up a little bit. Hide some of these areas that don't really matter so much. That there. Kind of maybe expand that a bit. When I was 17 on Halloween, I dressed up as Aladdin. A better master of one, yeah. Oh, that's the full saying. Nice. I didn't know that. Just means be flexible enough to learn new things, but don't be afraid to focus on them. Exactly. Oh, that's great. I like that. So see, now what I did, so I filled this area up a little bit. And so now those gaps, when we look at this print, yeah, we could change some of this. So what this will do is, again, this will make this a little bit more solid when we finalize it, and help ensure that it works out. And then also, what we can do is get in here. Let's see if we can isolate this. This might be a little hard to isolate it because it's just a... Yeah, it's going to be a little hard to isolate that. That's okay. That actually will work out pretty well. So we refined our sculpt a little bit. We have something that's filling in the space enough that when we print this, this will pretty much help out and get things a little bit more solid. So now we can print that a little bit more, something like this, and the supports will be underneath. And it will hold up a lot better, so then these posts here can print upwards. Because again, I'm thinking that this part in itself may only be like, 24 millimeter. Like this will be tiny on its own. So in that detail, that's not even going to resonate. It's not even going to show up. Like, it's not going to be that bad. So we're good on that front. Is it already 6:30? That's crazy. Half the time has passed. Now that we got that, let's go ahead and Control Tap there on the history. And now we're going to go ahead. What I sometimes will do, depending on if the model is super small, sometimes I'll subdivide up just one more time after adding in those small little inserts. Just to kind of see. Now this is a bit of a risk. I have a beefier machine, so I went from 5 million to 21 million. But the reason for that is to kind of see if I can get a little bit more resolution out of there. That's almost unnecessary though, so we're just going to go ahead and back that up. And then let's just go ahead and we'll use Dynamesh Master, Dynamesh utility. I prefer Dynamesh Master. I love it a lot. And let's go ahead and take this to 2 million. And let's... Yep, that works. Let's do it. All right. Looks like that welded pretty well. Now let's go to Project History. So again, that's under Subtool, Project History. And that'll just bring that detail back, which is all we really need. So prepping for 3D print gets kind of boring sometimes. Especially if you have high detail, that could take a bit. All right. Now the fun part is let's start adding some of these keys in there. I'm going to go ahead and add a key right here under his belly. So last week what we did was we created, sorry, I got a weird text message. We created some simple keys that I'm going to load up real quick. So if I go to desktop, basic 3D printing keys, this is what we created last week. We had a simple one that we can use for live boolean. We had a 1-inch cube, and then we had this really basic male-female key that you could just use to cut one another out of if you need to. What I did from here was I turned this into a brush, and all I did was I basically deleted everything else. Oop, oop, just like such. And then from here, delete hidden, because I only want this part. And I faced it where the taper side is facing me. So just like this. And then I hit B, and then went down to create insert brush, say new. And now I have a key. that I can stack on each other. Then I can go ahead and delete that. Delete this one too. Let's delete this mouth, we don't need it. So now we have this guy. And what I'm going to do is face this upside down. I'm going to go ahead and, holding shift, add a key. Oh, that was actually on the top. Okay, great, wonderful. So that was on the top, let's go underneath it. Like such. Now, I've inserted that key with that brush, and I can basically bring this in and see how far I want to make that fit. Now I can either cut this way, where this will kind of stack in and cut into this part, or I think actually I want to do it the other way. So I'll actually come here to this guy. We'll stack this up. Yeah, this will be a better key. Let's turn everything off but the two I need. And now I can pretty much interact with this piece. Because what I'll be doing is I'll actually be cutting this leg with this against this body to make the proper fit. And what I can also do, if I like, is instead of just adding the key, we can see how deep this gets cut into here. So what I can do is actually take this and let's slice curve this. You see how much it's actually recessed into the next part. So let's hold shift control and let's do slice curve because I want a nice clean flat surface. I'm going to go ahead and just slice curve right about there. What that did was that gave me a new polygroup. If I check all the way around, make sure that polygroup is not embedded too much. In this case, it's actually out just a little bit. So let's lift it up a little bit into there, just a bit. So that it's just hidden a bit. Now I'm going to take that. Just check, see if there's no holes visible. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden. So if I go to geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, and then close holes, that's going to close this hole right here. And then let me go ahead and actually Dynamesh this one more time. Actually, before I do that, there's a little bit of a hole right here. That's why I was going to do that. But first, let's actually come here. Let's go back to our brush. We have our new brush right here. Actually, make that a little bit wider so we can see how that fits in there. So now we have a clean surface that will cut into the main body. And I kind of want a big key because it's a big part on top. So we'll do something like that. And what's neat about this is completely custom fit. Make sure we can't see that key, which we can't. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and reselect a new history, and then I'm going to go ahead and Dynamesh one more time. Let's see, are the keys a fixed size on the brush? Oh, yeah, never mind. So yeah, I mean, on the brush itself, the way I did it, you could draw a key out and then you can squeeze it, you can widen it. But the key is an independent piece, so when you draw it out, just start reshaping it however you need to. The most important part is you want your keys to have, you want your keys to be tapered because it's going to insert into your next mating part a lot easier. If you have a straight key, like a straight peg, then you'll get sharp edges that will interfere with each other. So if the key is tapered, even just slightly, like this is a little bit maybe over exaggerative, but even just like, you know, let's say like 5 degrees, like this is probably 15, even just 5-degree taper will give you something a lot better. and it'll just slide in a lot easier. So as long as you have that taper, you're fine. And see, now we have this right here. Okay. Now we have a little bit of an issue right here. We have this kind of little funky overhang. So I'm actually going to go ahead and isolate this section like that. And I'm going to delete hidden. I'm going to close holes, kind of smooth that down. So just a little bit. That would cause an issue. There we go. That's a much better part. And what I also want to do is I want to draw out a shape like this, because we go back to our subtool and we come down to our base. We have this base right here. So we'll just go ahead and maybe insert that a little bit more. Straighten that up like such. There we go. And this will be custom fit. Just perfect. Now what I want to pay attention to is that I'm leaving space at the bottom right here, so I'm not breaking through my subtool. You always want to make sure you're not going to bust through your subtool. Hey, happy extruder. Hope all is well, looking great. Thanks, man. Yeah, great to see you too. There we go. Let's go up a little bit more. Yeah, perfect. So now we have this. Do that one more time. Let's go ahead and select that detail. Let's go up to Z plugin. Let's Dynamesh it one more time. And then project history. That way we have a nice watertight model that the keys are now a part of. And here in a minute, I'm actually going to show you how I'm going to cut one part to another. There we go. Because when working with detail, cutting one part against another can actually be kind of an issue. So we want to make sure that we do a nice job and make sure we get clean geometry as much as possible. All right. So that's what we have so far. So this is one piece. Now, you might be asking yourself too, isn't this piece going to be so much heavier than the bottom piece? This is where, and let's go ahead and save this too, while I answer my own question. The best part about prepping for 3D print is understanding which parts are going to be solid and which parts will be hollow. If we look at something like this, we want the illusion that this part is solid. But really, this part right here most likely will be solid. I would print this solid, and then I would hollow this piece out. And the way we can hollow that is when we cut one part to another. Then we can make secret holes that then this model can be hollow, and then gives you that illusion that this part is much thicker when in reality it's not. So I'm keeping in mind that this will be pretty solid, this will be pretty solid, and this right here will more likely be hollow. And because of what it is and how we're going to end up printing it, because it's going to be kind of a miniature, you know, we'll make sure that we create like a little bit of a pocket or something if we need to in ZBrush, but I think the slicer can handle it. Because when I say mini, it's probably going to be like 2-3 inches tall. So it'll be big enough to handle it. All right. Catch a ride. Let's go ahead and look at everything one more time. I do that a lot. I inspect a lot. So we prepped this Bokoblin, we've prepped this Bokoblin, I have not prepped this Bokoblin. Everything else from here is going to be downhill. And actually what I might end up doing... is actually welding this piece on top of his head as well. Could you put a drain hole on the top of the female key in the main body? Yep, absolutely. That's exactly where I would put it. I put a nice big one. Usually you want like 2 drain holes. 3 is the best number, but 2 works out well. But if you can get one really big one, that's maybe like, I don't know, like maybe a couple, I'd say like 5 to 10 millimeter. If you're going with bigger prints, then that's usually big enough where you don't need too many drain holes. But you just want to make sure that the one you have on there is good. So I'm actually going to weld that to this piece. So let's merge that down. There we go. And you can see I've already, if I zoom all the way in here, you can see that there's a gap filler piece that I've inserted. I think we did that a stream ago. I think we did that last stream. I'm gonna go ahead and auto groups so I can make sure that I select all the proper stuff. Because what I'm going to do with this piece, because it's not welded yet, I'm actually going to go ahead and bring that closer. Whoa. How is that moving? Auto groups. Thank you. That was weird. I'm going to bring that a little bit closer so actually this can weld to the rock itself, which will actually give me a little... This will actually support this rock attached to this spike or this tooth or whatever will support itself, making it a little bit easier to print. But we'll make sure that there's a little bit of a space right here so it looks like it's floating when we look at it from afar. Afar. Like such. Gonna grab that detail right there, and then let's go ahead and Z-plug in Dynamesh. Could you put the drain on? Oh yeah, did you weld it to the bit between the boards? I did right now. Now it's welded as one piece. And then I'm going to go ahead and project history, which will just give me my detail back. And the tricky part is making sure everything gets welded together properly. You see my ropes are a little funky right now. Now, I will tell you guys, sometimes you're going to have to sculpt some detail back, okay? So, when you see things on how they're being welded together, sometimes things will get a little funky, and you might lose some detail. If you do, just kind of sculpt it back. We can see here, this is pretty much welded together pretty nicely, actually. And if you want to check to see if things are welded together correctly, if you go to Polygroups and hit Auto Groups, if you only get one subtool, if you only get one polygroup color, hit Auto Groups a bunch of times, you're only getting one color, that means that it's connected to each other. And when it's connected to each other, it's welded together. It's a little friendly way to check. all sorts of ways. Whenever I look at models, my brain starts adding supports. 3D printing life! Yeah, I am right there with you. I look at something like this and I think, how am I going to print that? And the key thing to remember too is that everything is based on gravity, right? So let's go ahead and delete this for a second. So in my mind, because I'm going to want these parts to be supported by the model naturally, if we look at it, it's going to print upside down, which means this part will print first, and as it lifts on the resin printer, it's going to print this section like that. So to prevent a lot of supports, more than likely, I'll print it something like this, right? And this right here might need some supports, but you're always going to try to go for the minimum supports as possible. So our supports will be up like this. Here, be some supports here, maybe some supports in this area. But everything else should help support itself. Especially if we try to remember that anything that is at least at a 45-degree angle and up to 90-degree will print pretty well with minimal supports. This is our minimal support range. Anything below this, 0 to 45, is going to need supports. So as long as we have something like this right here, where this is connected with itself and it's at a nice angle, you won't have to worry about support so much. So we're always trying to go for that minimal support approach as much as possible. Okay. And yeah, after a lot of experience and time, you'll start just dreaming about supports and life will be pretty good. Okay. Okay. Heroes, bitch, collectibles! How's it going? It's going pretty good. How are you doing? Now notice too, guys, that I am welding things together slowly but surely. I'm not welding too much too quickly. But I'm thinking, which is dangerous for me, I'm thinking that I might be able to get away with connecting the rest of this. Not this one. I want this plank to be on its own. Like I want these boxes to be on their own. Because it's user interaction, you can pick it up and you as the collectible artist can pick it up and set it wherever you want it to be. So you can kind of make it your own little personal experience. I like doing that sometimes. So the boxes will be on their own. The ladder will be on its own so that you can get the box in and out. But this right here, we're going to weld this part to the body, and same thing with this part. We'll weld this to the main body. So this will be the biggest thing to support. Let's turn all that off. Let's just have this here. There we go. And before we do too much too quickly, let's go ahead and add in a little bit extra. Something like that. You know, again, we'll do another minimal support dude. Which is kind of what I was thinking originally, but you never know. Question, how can I convince my wife to let me buy a 3D printer? I don't know if it's it's worth an ask. That's a great question. Do a lot of chores? Maybe if you're a big spender, maybe back off on spending for a little bit. Pray a lot? I don't know, man. Good man. Figured I'd pop in and see how things are. Dude, they're coming along great. Thank you so much. Pray I'll try that one. That's probably, yeah. Yeah. Let me know how that works. I guess if you tag me hashtag prayer works when you get your printer, then I'll know what you're talking about. Just tag IR Sculpts. Prayer works. Nobody's gonna know but us. Yeah, deals on Elgo, Mars, and Saturns all the time on Amazon. Absolutely. My husband said the happy wife, happy life printer arose after getting the printer. Mather just come back and heard for hashtag prayer works. What the heck are we sculpting? Trying to get this man a printer! There we go. There we go. And again, then we're going to go ahead and isolate some of these like this, right? And then we're going to go ahead and push them together a little bit more. And what's really cool, we can clean up our sloppy Cotton Eye Joe here. By isolating and maybe branching some of this out here, making some of these, you know, fixing the ugliness that we have dealt with. You know, things, getting your prints to look good with things that are supposed to wrap around. You know, taking that extra moment to just come through, select the things that make the most sense, mask it, never weld until you're sure. There we go, like that. Let's see here. Just got a Saturn and still haven't had time to set it up. Set it up! Come on, you can do it, Harry. Print things to fix things around the house. And pray nothing breaks. How do you do the texture on the log noise? I believe it can also be exaggerated for the print, right? Yeah, you always want to exaggerate for the print as much as possible, which is the very final stage. After I weld things together, that's when I go back over detail. But for the texture on the logs, what I had done was I actually... Here, one second. What I had done was I actually used a texture within ZBrush. So if you open up Spotlight and then you go to texture, you get a bunch of texture presets that are used within ZBrush. What I had done is after I set up my print and was ready for texture, I came all the way over here under texture and I grabbed this wood. Grab this wood 2 texture, double clicked it, and when you double click it, it now brings that texture over to this image. From here, I just took the image and I went to make alpha. As soon as I did that, I turned off the texture and then put that alpha on a brush that I wanted, like the standard with the drag alpha, selected that, and then once I had my quote texture, I then just started dragging that on and finding the direction that I needed it to, adjusting my brush as best I can, which gave me that kind of texture. Before then, the cuts that are in here, I just did that with the Dam Standard or the SK cloth brush or slash brush, and just went in by hand, something like BDS, and I just cut those in like such. And I just followed a grain. Wood follows a grainy texture, so there's always a direction in the wood anatomy. So you just kind of look up some reference and then you sculpt accordingly. These are all great suggestions so far. Prayer going around the house. Rope is so good too. Currently researching how to make good looking rope. Actually, if you go to YouTube and go to Ask ZBrush Braid, you can get a really great start on how to do make a braid effect, and it's the same process. So yeah, if you go to YouTube, so what I recommend, YouTube Live, boop, and then just pop in here and then type in Ask ZBrush. Don't be like me and not know how to spell. How can I make a curved braid? Braided. IMM braid, right? And I believe Joseph just does this one in particular. But you can go through and you could take the same thing and make a rope brush. I believe if you do Ask ZBrush rope, there you go. Braided rope in ZBrush, you can find something very, very quickly and very effectively, and you can follow along with a ton of these tutorials pretty quick. So Ask ZBrush rope. Braid! Thank you, Daisuke. Look at that. Whoop whoop. Oh, I see. Texture, that's interesting. Thank you. Yeah, actually, most of the time, guys, for texture, just go to texture. Come up here. You have cracks, you have drains, you have bricks, you have all sorts of stuff. You need to make something look like a brick. You know, just come up here, double tap it, and then turn that into an alpha. And you can even export this. You can then export and call this, you can call this brick. Wow, I really can't spell today. Go ahead and export that out as a PSD, and then open it up in like some sort of Photoshop program. You know, adjust the alphas, make them look really good, bring it back into ZBrush, and use that. Really simple. In fact, if you want a more in-depth way on how to make alphas a bit more intense, you come over to my YouTube channel, which is right here, and then go to ZBrush Help and look at my goofy head for a second. Right here is a create alphas to use in ZBrush, and I go over the whole process on how you can do that, or if you just want to click this link, that right there, that will take you to how you can make some alphas within ZBrush and really just help push your detailing to the next level. And if you just remember that, you know, white is adding and black is non-existent or taking away, if you remember that that black and white rule, then working with grayscale, you can play a lot and get some good depth. You can get some good, decent details with just a swipe of the pen. So check those out. Those are always super helpful, if I do say so myself, you know. There we go. Yeah, not a problem. Glad to help. Oh. Back that up for a second. I didn't mean to mask that off yet. Still kind of coming through and fixing some of my issues. And this is the thing too, when you are prepping for 3D print, you're going to start noticing a lot of your own mistakes. And that's okay, you know? This is the time to fix it, because now you're reverse engineering your sculpts. You can go back in and kind of clean it up and make it so that it makes more sense, that it feels right. So that way when you're ready to send it to print, all that stuff is fixed the way you want it. Like here, got a lot of clipping on these ropes, so I'm just going to isolate it. Come on over here, lift some of this up a bit. There you go. Just fix a lot of this stuff. This is why it takes me forever to get things prepped for print, because I'm now meticulously coming through here and yelling at myself on why I didn't take the time when I was sculpting it to do it right. You know? But this extra time really does just make the difference. I gotta go to sleep. It's 3 a.m. in Portugal. This was super helpful. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Get a good night's sleep. Rest. And like I said, I will soon be releasing this to the wild for everybody to enjoy. And next week we're starting that Demon Slayer sculpt. It's happening. So, you know, you guys are going to watch me fiddle with some anime sculptures. I'm really excited. I've sculpted a few different anime, and I'm excited because it's actually a style that I'm trying to get better at. So, you know, always challenge yourself. What did I do? That's what I did. Here, real quick. Before I put in all this extra work to realize, okay, that is actually doing what I needed to do. Sometimes, if you are setting up too much work, like look, that's clipping. I didn't need to fix half of that. Good job. Am I the only one who yells at myself? Like, how did you do that? There we go. Okay, this will actually be really fun. I'm going to weld this whole thing together, so let's do it. So let's come here. Let's go merge down. And one more time, merge down. There we go. So remember, I'm planning on printing this a lot like this, and that's going to look really cool. I'm really excited about that. Let's go ahead and save it. Save as one more time. Okay. Yeah, I'll have others do it for me. Nice, nice. All right. Okay. Shout at myself. Yeah. That means we're doing something right. That's what I tell myself. I can go to sleep at night. It's okay that you yell at yourself, man. Oop. Maybe I can tune into the Discord lounge for some pointers. I want to do a sculpt of Sipa. Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Yes, Sypha. Oh my gosh. You got my attention, hero. And struggling a bit with his anime face style. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now. Hold on. And I am doing this myself. So, watch this. First off, I'm going to go into my YouTube real quick. No, you're not going to see. But I'm going to tell you, making a Japanese head. Okay? Here's the tutorial that has helped me out so much. Watch this. Loop. Yep. Watch this. It's amazing. It works out really, really great. Anime is a very hard style to get right. So definitely go through that. There's a lot more. If you go into my Discord lounge, there is actually more tips on anime style in particular. So if you go into the lounge, and for those of you who would like to join my Discord, welcome in and hang out with just a bunch of like-minded artists and good people. There it is. Click that link, go into my Discord. If you go into the lounge text, so if you go to my Discord, which is right here, and then you can see that there's awesome people hanging out in the lounge. This is where sometimes I am during the week, but there's always a lot of people in here. Go into the text lounge, and then there's actually some more tutorials on anime stuff. There's a few of us who are trying to get better at it, for sure. So jump in there, check that stuff out, come hang out with me. And if I'm not in there, somebody else is too. You guys will like it. I can't say yet. What's up, Matt? Hey, what's up, Ryan? Anime is hard. I'm trying to learn. The eyes are the hardest part for me. Yeah. Daisuke, do you know how hard it was when let me put it this way. I know how to search the rabbit hole that is YouTube, and when I need to find something, if it's on there, I'm gonna find it. When I want to learn bad enough, I will rip open the interwebs and I will dive into the one spot. And that video was so hard to find, but I found it like a year ago when I first was interested in doing anime. And yeah, if it exists, I will find it. Oh yes, yeah, those SK brushes are perfect. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Sakaki watch his stuff too. He's here on Pixo as well. Watch his stuff. Amazing artist. So much to learn. Yeah, I'll chat with you this week. Glad I got your attention. She's a super cool character. She is. She's one of my favorite characters in that anime series. If you guys haven't seen Castlevania on Netflix, 4 seasons. It is completely finished. Watch it. It's amazing, and you will be inspired so much. I love that show. I really want them to do. I want them to continue Alucard, and my favorite game was Symphony of the Night. I would love for Netflix to do a Symphony of the Night anime telling of that, because that's a really cool story arc in my opinion. But anyway, okay, I digress. Yeah, the thing is, though, there's not a whole lot of information on YouTube about doing anime right for sculpting. But there's a few resources on there, so hopefully you guys find it useful. There we go. Love that Vegeta had access guide. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, the original Castlevania NES still pops in my head from time to this day. Yeah, I actually have the original. I have the Castlevania collection on Steam, which is Castlevania. It's Castlevania 1, 2, and 3 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, followed by Super Castlevania, which was on the Super Nintendo, and I think there is one other Castlevania on there. But I just went through and beat Dracula's Curse, which I think is the third one. I think that's the third one. Which is essentially what the anime was based off of. Yes. Love how they did Alucard in the ending, left it open for a spin-off. Maybe? Spoilers? Possibly? Yep, I hope so. They're great to play. The modern ones haven't even been... Yeah, haven't even been patched on them. Nice. Yeah, I picked that up for the Switch back in the wintertime. Nice! Okay. Lid MD. I'm gonna try to Google Translate what you're asking because I speak 1.002 languages. Um, and that is not one of them. So I'm going to try to, let's see, will the exported model details be retained is the question that I'm getting from Google. And the answer is mostly. Oh, thank you so much. Mostly, there's always going to be detail loss. So once I'm done welding everything together and getting it merged the way I want, then I'm going to go through and refine some details, hand sculpt them. If need be, maybe go over with a little bit of contrast, delta brush, or possibly go to deformation and contrast slider. And that helps pop some of the details. So I will have to go back over and push it, but you're always going to get some sort of detail loss, anywhere between 5 to 15% detail loss, depending on your printer, depending on your settings, depending on the post-process cleanup. If you're doing resin versus FDM, FDM is going to get a lot more detail loss than resin, but with fine details with resin, depending on your process, will greatly depend on how that actually turns up. So, after merging, will you Dynamesh to make them watertight? Yes. Yes, I will. Wait. Okay. His answer was, in most cases, yes. Okay, cool. Thanks, Daisuke. All right. Just remember, guys, there's always going to be a little bit of detail loss. Our goal is to try to hold on to as much as possible. And depending on the size of the sculpt will greatly also depend on how much detail is retained. Because this will only be, you know, a few inches in height, you know, between 2 to 6 inches, depending on how big people want to print it, how big I print it. The smaller it is, the harder it's going to be to retain tiny details. So the bigger ones will stay, but the smaller ones might dissipate. So there's a lot of little factors on there. Beautiful work. My dream, man, is to learn more about ZBrush, a program that I'm a fan of, but my computer is outdated. I suck at English. Actually, your English is pretty good. I think your English is better than mine sometimes. Who would help me in the holy Google? Yep. Just understand blah blah, but I can't speak English. The money is still low. I work with the old computer, screw tight. My graphics card, an AMD HD 6570, doesn't quite update anymore in my studio. I'm going to stop real quick and just let you know that ZBrush does not, repeat, ZBrush does not utilize your GPU much at all. Graphics card is almost non-existent. I think the only thing that a graphics card is used for is when you hit render, or I believe ambient occlusion plugin for the new ZBrush does use the GPU, but for the most part, CPU is where it's at. ZBrush is primarily CPU dependent. So if you have a good CPU, which I'm scanning, I don't know what your CPU is, but depending on that, you should be okay. I have run ZBrush on an AMD Ryzen 3, which is a really low-end CPU. I think it was the 2600? 3500 maybe? Anyway, very, very non-powerful. I think it was 4 cores. It ran fine. I couldn't get some high poly counts that I'm getting now, you know, but for the most part, it should be fine. But you're doing great, man. Honestly, just start small and work your way up from there. Oh, is there any difference between foreign software and domestic software? I don't think so. I think ZBrush is pretty standard across the board. I know we recommend... Okay, Thanks, Daisuke. CPU and RAM, 100%. Yep. ZBrush can run great on a Surface Pro with integrated graphics. Yeah, because the graphics card doesn't matter. Again, I think ZBrush only uses the graphics card in 2 instances, and even then, it's really not that important. Just don't hit render a lot. Okay. Yeah. Always get software from the proper sources. Okay. All right, I think that's pretty good. I think this is ready for welds. I'm going to go ahead and save it. So who here is going to be doing the ZBrush sculpt off with me? Come on, it's just 3 hours. You know you want to. Don't you wanna Fanta? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do ZBrush Dynamesh. So we're gonna Dynamesh ZBrush Dynamesh at 2 mil. I'm in for the sculpt off. Yes! Hairy mandibles. Yes! Correct. Awesome. Cool. Okay. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and project history. They have not announced the theme yet. As soon as we know, we will tell you. But at this time, there is no theme. But I will give you guys, okay, here you go. Here's your first tip for the ZBrush Summit, okay? This is something that I discovered, and I really encourage others to do it. So you have, if the rules remain the same, as far as I've read them, they are, you have 3 hours to produce a illustration based on a theme within ZBrush. You must sculpt and render within ZBrush, no other program. That being said, ZBrush Render is very powerful, but it is a very in-depth process. So what I recommend you guys do is when you practice for the sculpt off, do not practice sculpting for 3 hours. Practice sculpting for 2 hours. The better you can get at blocking out your forms quickly within the 2 hours, the easier it will be to give yourself some time to produce a good render. I have plans as we get closer to October, because right now it's August, so we got some time, baby. We got time. Got a little over 2 months. As we get closer to October, my plan is to start doing more speed sculpt themes where you guys can sculpt with me as we get closer. So the Sundays will kind of change to a more speed sculpt approach, and we'll do things based on a random theme, and you can hang out and do that with me. And then as we get close, I'm going to do a surprise how to render in ZBrush video that you're going to want to be for, and I will announce before we do it. That will help you get a little bit better at rendering within ZBrush, because you're going to want all of that knowledge. So be very, 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 when you practice, be very, very patient with yourself. Try not to rush. Focus on learning little tips and tricks on how to block out forms quickly. But practice sculpting in 2 hours, not 3, because you really want to give yourself time to produce a really good render. And on top of it, it's 3 hours to sculpt, render, and upload for completion. So you even have just a little bit less time. So giving yourself that extra time can make sure that you get your submission in as quickly as possible. So that is the tip. But I have plans to give some little nuggets for those who hang out with me on Sundays, because you guys know how much I love hanging out with you guys. See, look at that. Auto groups, all one piece for the win. That is beautiful. All right, let's go ahead and save this. Actually, let's save a new piece before the merger, before the snap. No one wants to see me spin a sphere in the viewport for 3 hours. Yeah. Here's the tip for rendering. Use the Greyhound startup project in the library. It has a decent render settings that you could tweak quickly. Very true. Yep. Yep. Go to projects. You have all sorts of cool stuff. And pretty much the rules are no third-party brushes. Any custom brushes must be made within ZBrush at the time during the sculpt off. But you can use any asset that comes stock with ZBrush. So if you're like me and you've modified the crap out of your brush palette, I recommend doing a fresh install just to make sure you don't accidentally break any rules, or clean out your folder of all these different brushes, which is actually really simple. You want to clean out your folder full of brushes. If you're on PC, Mac shouldn't be much different. But you go to your C drive, you go to Program Files, you go to your Pixologic, ZBrush, and then underneath there, this is all your basic stuff. But if you go to Z Startup, ZBrush Pro, if you just get rid of these are all my custom brushes. So if you go to Z Startup, Brush Presets, cut these out, right? Get rid of these, and then refresh it. So for example, if I were to cut these, let's put these here and say just new folder. Open that up, paste that all in there, right? So here is everything. This was the original folder that was left in there. And if I come in here, go to my brush, and go ahead and reset all my brushes, it will reload that tool. So now here's all your basic brushes. So if you do what I do, that's the way you can go ahead and get rid of all those extra brushes that you have installed, so you don't have to reinstall ZBrush. And then when you're done with the contest, just go back to your folders, cut your brushes out, go back to your Z Startup, your brush presets, paste them all back in there, come back into ZBrush, hit B, reset all brushes, so you don't have to shut down ZBrush. And now all your brushes are right back where they started. So it's a good way to do that. If you have modified ZBrush further, reinstall. I wonder if ZBrush can add a floor and shadows with black background and having blending between two colors, so that you can render a miniature, let's say on a gray surface, black background in the back and shadow. Demoness. You mean if you just add a floor right here? And then you hit render, it will add shadows. Is that what you mean? Like such? I'm not sure if I understood you correctly. Yeah, if you just come up here, if you go to your, I'm going to go to Preferences, I'm going to go to Interface, Config. I'm going to restore Standard UI. If you're here on the side, you know, you have a bunch of stuff, you have the floor right here. Just turn that floor on. Just right there. And then hit render, and then it does all your shadows right out the gate. And then of course too, if you come up to render, you go to BPR shadow, you can adjust the strength, the raise, and the angle. I say like 30. Hit Shift R again. And then that will re-render with softer shadows. So what I will recommend is that if you do have the floor on, when you come up underneath and you hit render, watch what happens. You're going to get like aliasing happening underneath part of your image. Now notice how there's like aliasing happening. So when you turn on the floor, make sure that you are above it. So when you render, there's no aliasing happening. I've never hit render with floor on. Well, there you go, buddy. Glad I can help. I've actually only recently gotten into rendering in ZBrush, hence I saw you can render them pretty good looking. Yeah, you really can. You really, really can. I will tell you guys, like, check this out. All right, here you go. Here's a little bit of like some basic rendering skills. Okay, come over here, and this will be with standard ZBrush. Notice I changed my UI for a second. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift. I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift R for a second. And we're going to go over more of this a little bit later. But if you take render and slap this over here, you have render shadowing, right? But then you have BPR filters. Guys, BPR filters is your best friend. You can come in here and you have all these different presets. This first one is noise. I've never used it because I don't add noise to my renders, but if you wanted to, you can. But you can use blur. It has sharpen. If I turn on sharpen, notice it updates on the fly. It's slightly soft. Now it's much sharper. And then, of course, you can adjust all that. Blend modes, if you're familiar with with other programs like Photoshop, then you understand blend modes a little bit more. Orton can change the brightness and give you a little bit more effect. But more than that, you can turn on noise, come in here, and you have all these different options. So let's say I want to give it more of like a museum feel, right? So what I would do is turn around and switch it from noise to radial overlay, which basically now puts a spotlight from the top down. Go to modifiers. Now I can adjust this a little bit. I now have a black background, and now my light is focused solely on my model. And then I can also take this blur, turn this on, come here and do material shading, come to texture, and pick a dark metal. And look at that. Look at what just happened right there. Then I'm going to take my blend mode. I'm going to change that to multiply. No, maybe not. Let's try overlay. Now I'm getting a little bit more pop. And that's just with a simple image. I'm not even adjusting half of this stuff down here, because you don't need to. But then you can take that opacity, drop that down, so you get a little bit of a bloop, just a little bit of a nice little kiss on it. You have glow. You can turn that. Come over here, say, oh, you know, maybe I really want some heavy cavity outlining. So I have outline cavity. Gives me a little bit more depth and feel to it. So much more you could do here. This is just with BPR filters. Let alone, notice that we can add fog. We have BPR ambient occlusion. We have some transparency. Then we have all these different render ones. So we can turn on ambient occlusion. We can turn on SSS wax preview. You can turn on fog. So if you adjust these settings here, you can really get into it. Then, if you really want to get crazy, go to material, pop over here. You have your red wax, right? Well, now you can change your modifiers. You could change all sorts of crazy colors. You could change, if you want it looking super waxy, say, yeah, change that. Nobody cares. Mixer, environment, matte cat maker. Like, you have so much at your disposal. So temperature, you can make all these different adjustments to the material itself. Yeah, sure. So you can really play and make new materials on the fly within ZBrush. So it's all in what you want to do, but most ZBrush users will probably never touch picker, material. Like, I've been in ZBrush for over 5 years now, and I just started playing with picker and material, and there are all sorts of stuff. Last week I made, no, was it last week? No, the week before last, I made a custom moss brush, and we started getting into some really crazy settings with depth and what else did we do? Yeah, we did a bunch of stuff. Alpha textures. So there's a lot more, and we're going to cover a lot more of that when we get closer to the summit to help prep you for your first summit, especially if you've been in there before. If you say red wax 2 more times, you'll summon Glenn. Red wax. Red wax. So yeah, so all sorts of stuff you could do. Also, make sure the floor size is matching the model size. Yeah, make sure you unify before too. Great point, Daisuke. Thank you. So yeah, all sorts of good stuff. And then yeah, just bloop, turn that floor off. And then if you're like me, go back to your custom UI, and there you go. Okay, before we leave, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to demonstrate how I would make this a little bit more print friendly, because this is very dense. This is 2.5 million polys, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate how I would do this, but this isn't the final piece yet. We're just running out of time, and I want to make sure that I get a lot more info in there. We haven't even started cutting it. So yeah, decimation time. So here's what I recommend. This is the fastest way to get the best results. Okay, I'm just going to duplicate this, and we're going to make sure this is soloed out. Okay. Go ahead and turn off that history. Okay, so what we're going to do is, here's our before. Okay, I'm just going to stamp that right there. What we're going to do is, all I really recommend doing, first things first, is go to Z plugin, which I have over here. Go to Decimation Master. So let's say we're done and we want to get this ready for print. Like, we are done with this. Now it's time to print it. So we need to export it. So this is what it looked like before. All I do, really, is if you come right down here. So we have Decimation Master, freeze borders, keep groups, keep UVs, keep and use poly paint. All that stuff is good if we had UVs that we wanted to go ahead and keep that. But if we scroll down, we have pre-process current, pre-process all. Obviously, pre-process current means the current subtool, all means everything. Be very careful with that. I find that pre-process all is a waste of time. It takes forever. Where pre-process current is very, very helpful. So what I recommend doing is actually control stamping right there on your history. And if you come on down, it's defaulted to 20% decimation with 200k polys on average, or in 200k points. If you go below, there's these presets. If your model is within 1 to 2 million polys, this is a little bit over, so this will be a fun little test. Just go ahead and hit 250k. And that's what we're going to do. That preset is really good to get it really low without taking too much time to pre-process and get it all fixed, because what we'd have to do is we'd have to pre-process current before we can even decimate it, because it has to figure out where it can keep the detail and where it could get rid of detail. So if you hit the preset, it does it all at the exact same time, and then it will be good to go as long as the detail's saved. So let's see. Bloop, bloop, bloop. And then I'm going to show you something else that's really cool. So it's reordering. This might take a little bit of time. Oop, there it is. So it went from 2.5 million to 250k. And this was before. This is after. So this is before. Stamp. This is after. So slight detail loss, right? And if we want to try, we can try to project history. Now there may not be enough information to hold on to any detailing, like we lost a good amount here. But ultimately, this held on to detail pretty well. Especially when this was the before. Oops. This was the before. Let's shift S to that. Oh, yep, there you go. Ah, hitting all sorts of buttons. And this is the after. So, not too bad when we really think about it. Like, before and after, we held a lot of information in there. So, Decimation Master is really, really, really good. Especially when you use that preset. But, let's say, back it up in history. Let's say I really do want to focus on keeping, let's say I want to focus on keeping this detail right up here, okay? Even though it held it pretty well, I'm crazy and I say I really want to make sure that this is super good on the detail. All we have to do at this point, let's go forward in time, we actually mask off the sections that we want to keep good amount of detail. Now, don't go crazy with this though, because you'll confuse ZBrush if you get too insane. But let's say these cracks are the most important things I want to keep. Mask these areas off, like such, okay? Then go back to decimation and hit that preset. What the masking will do is will actually tell ZBrush, this area is very important to me. Please keep all the detail, if possible, in this area. Everything else, I don't care about. So it's going to split 250,000 points among the whole thing, just like normal, but it's going to focus its attention first on the masked areas and saying, this is important. How do we keep all of that information there? The only way to do that is to have a lot of polygroups, or active points within those areas. Everything else can fall away to the wayside. This is good for faces when you have like a really round head, you know, like you separate the hair and you have the head, and you want to keep that face. So you just mask off that face area and let the rest do its thing. Now if we zoom in, you can see here where that mask was, it's a lot tighter of geometry, and then everything else kind of falls away. And it really spreads it out. But anywhere I had it masked, we zoom all the way in, hit Shift F, you'll see where it was, where that mask is, that's all that detail is super tight right there. So that's something to keep in mind when you need to keep detail going in your model. But if you don't care, like I didn't care, so we put our hands in the air, then just go ahead, keep your, you know, it's almost a waste of time. I don't even think you need to do the history. Just go ahead and hit that preset and you are good to go. And of course, escape cancels that. So that's the best way to prep. And then from there, once it is decimated, so let's say it is decimated, then that's when you export using your 3D print. So I wanted to cover that a little bit. The other thing I wanted to cover real quick is let's actually cut the feet against the base. So that way we can cover that a little bit more. I'm gonna go here, Talus feet, loop, and then let's turn this part on. Let's go base. That way you guys can have a little bit more information about all of this. Let's go rename. Let's go Talus base. Let's save it real quick. You didn't know about that? Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's really great for faces. I think I use it the most when I'm any type of face character. If I have to spread it out, that's the best way to do it. Okay, so now we're gonna want to cut. Let's go over cutting for a second. Now, the very first thing I would recommend that you do is actually set scale before you make your cuts. Okay, so let's say we're extremely happy with this. Here's our cube, right? So we set this last week. I'm gonna kind of go over this real quick. Last week what we did was we made a 1-inch cube, and then we ended up stacking it to be so many cubes tall, and then we called that cube 1 inch. So what we were able to do then, now that we've set ourselves up for success, so if you didn't watch last week's video, go back and check that out. It's more towards the end. Now what we do is we can go to Scale Master with the 1-inch cube selected and go set scene scale, and it retains that information. It remembers what that scale is. And that's the best way, in my opinion, to scale within ZBrush. So we have 25.4 millimeters, which is equal to 1 inch in the imperial system, which is what most people from the States at least are used to. But 3D printing is millimeter based, so you really want to focus on that. So just remember 25.4, you're good to go. So that's our 1 inch cube. We're going to select that. And now our whole model is set to that 25.4. And if we really want to see what that is like, here, I don't know why I'm doing things the hard way. Let's turn this up here. Just gonna go ahead real quick and set that there like that. So it's, let's see, what we're at here. I'm gonna auto group it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We made it about 8 inches tall, so a lot bigger than I remember. Okay, which is fine. So now that that is set, we can now play with some numbers. So we can turn everything off, come down to the bottom, and now we can just play with these two. What I do recommend doing is working with folders. This is my process. There's a bunch of ways to deal with this. We don't need to save it. There's a bunch of ways to deal with cutting subtools, but I think folders is a lot cleaner. So what I recommend is we want to cut the legs against the feet. We want to make the hole here in the base. So we're going to need to utilize the feet to cut against. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the base. I'm going to hit Control F, and that's going to create a folder. Let's name that base cutting. And now we have a folder with that base in it. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take the feet and we're going to duplicate it. And we're going to duplicate it because we're actually going to scale this the feet up just a little bit to give us room so that the parts fit correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Shift D, which is my favorite way to do any type of duplicating. And then we're going to bring that straight into the base, and we're actually going to put it underneath. And we're going to turn off this main one and hit solo. Okay. Now what I want to do is I actually want to scale this up. Now this is a little bit more of trial and error. Each printer is different, but if you set the scale, this should pretty much get you close to what you're looking for. What I do first is I take a look at how the parts intersect with each other. And I notice that it's pretty much embedded. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to take this feet, and I'm actually going to take the trim dynamic, so the BTD. I'm going to lightly just kind of come through and get rid of some of this noise that I know is going to intersect. This is already going to give me a little bit more success, and I'm going to constantly check it to make sure I'm not taking off too much information that is visible. But with trim dynamic, it's going to help keep the area nice and clean. Okay. Now we're not going too much, I'm just trying to take the high sides off, so I'm just going lightly over it. And I'm not going too wild, just lightly cutting it just a bit. Okay. And what I will do too, sometimes I'll take like clay buildup or the SK brush a little bit, and I will come in here and I'll fill any gaps that might be just a little bit too much. Okay, filling those gaps is going to make sure that the surface is as clean as possible. Sculptastic! Don't know if you covered this. I like to use BPR filters for aperture, depth of field, and blur. Yeah, that's good too. Now we'll cover more of that as we get closer to this, as we get closer to the sculpt off. I'm creating a plan so that we can give you guys some good information so you have some good success. So that's pretty clean. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm quickly going to compare one to the other. So the cutting model versus the non-cutting model, there's always going to be a little bit of difference when you're doing some cleanup. So just kind of check to make sure that it's not too different. And this is pretty close. You know, we're working within millimeters at this point, and soon it's not going to matter when I do the next step. So just don't go too crazy with it. Now let's turn off transparent. And now with the legs selected, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go down to deformation. I'm going to go to inflate. I'm actually going to inflate this by 2. Okay? And that's going to push it up a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and usually it'll be up here for you guys. In fact, let's just go ahead and cover restore standard for a second. Come up here, we're going to turn on live boolean. We're going to come down, and I'm actually going to, you see right here under Talus feet, there is a cut option. I click that. Now I'm cutting out this section. And you can see here there's a little bit of noise on the inside. A little bit of noise right there. And if I turn the second one on, you can see how well this is intersecting. Okay. Turn that off for a second. It's looking pretty good. Now, when you're doing custom cuts like this, a lot of times it's important to remember that you might want to spend the time cleaning up the model as best as you can. So you kind of go through and you take a look at it and you say, okay, that makes sense. What you could do as well is you could take your move tool, and sometimes it's helpful to move the model against the cutting tool just to kind of see if you can get just a little bit better result. This right here will be easy to clean up because you got a little bit of a lip, but outside of that, I think that's not too bad. %% of sculptors for 3D printing should be watching this video right now. Yeah. And so now that we got what we like, we're going to go ahead and come in here in Boolean folder. And so this is going to go ahead and cut this up, and it's going to give me another piece. And this is why I like working with folders, because now I have a piece, and I can play with this piece. I can work with it a little bit more. Now what I recommend doing is if we look at the geometry, you can see here that we have pretty nice clean geometry. And what I mean by that is it's Dynamesh and it's easy to work with. It's dense enough to work with. So we could come in and take the trim dynamic, for example. It's not clean as an animation already. Let me rephrase that. But now what I could do is I can come in here and I can trim off around this edge where there's a little bit of overlap. And I can clean this part up right here. Getting rid of some of these overhangs and a little bit of lips that are going to cause issues in the long run. So we're going to go ahead and just trim this out. And with Trim Dynamic, you're able to actually kind of blend this all together. Prepping for 3D print is a little bit of work. The idea too is we're trying to preserve the sculpture as much as possible. Because we've made a pretty blanket sculpture, now we're cutting into it, we want to hide our seams as much as possible. And glue is good. Wood fill is another good resource to kind of help hide seams. But we do 90% of seam hiding within the initial cut. So as long as we do our job right here and we come in through and start trimming against, we can preserve a lot of this stuff. So we're going to come in here right here, clean this up. I would say personally, it's sometimes a little bit easier to cut against characters with clothing because there's natural clothing seams we can hide stuff in. But when we're doing stuff like bases, we want to utilize the sculpture's um, natural seams as much as possible. I find bases to be a little bit more challenging just because um, sometimes there's just no real way to split it without being obvious. So you try to find little creative ways. Here, because he's stepping into mud, I'm able to like kind of sink him in a little bit and create a little bit of an illusion that his feet are going to be embedded. And then when I glue him in here, should be pretty good. And a lot of this is just practice. So you look at those high spots, and then what we do is we turn on the original one, okay? So now we have this original piece right here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on transparent, which is on the side here of the original. And then I'm going to go down to display properties. I'm going to flip normal. Now I'm going to select the feet by alt tapping on it. Now what you can do is when we zoom in, you can see there's a little bit of space right here. We can actually measure this space. Hide the crimes. Yep. So now we can actually measure the space by turning on our gizmo, hitting Y to give our transparent. I mean our transpose line. Jeez, I said transparent. Oops. Zoom in here. Oh my goodness. What's up with you, man? Okay. Kind of angle this a little bit. Come in here. Now I can actually measure that spot. And it's about 0.2727 millimeters. It's right up here at this top part. It's kind of, might be hard to see on the stream, but it's on the upper left. And that right there is actually pretty good. That's a pretty good... We could probably go a little bit better with that if we wanted to. But for the most part, that's pretty good. Now we come here and we flip normals again. If we like it, great, keep it. If we don't, let's say we don't, let's say we hate it, just delete that piece. We still have our folder. We turn our folder back on. We take our cutting tool and we say, you know what, let's actually go a little bit more. 0.27 is just a little tight. That's like a little bit more than a layer line. So let's actually inflate it a bit more. So it remembers what you did. So if we did 2 already, let's do another 1.5. That'll go up just a bit more. So it went up just a little bit more. We say, great. Let's go ahead and recut that. So again, this is a little bit more advanced cutting. We're cutting one tool against another. You think it's 0.3 for forms too? Mine's pretty tight. For my Epax X1, I've gotten away with about a 0.2 to 0.3, but I like to have like 0.3 to 0.5 personally. And so, yep, let's go ahead and repeat that process here real quick. Actually, let's just say we did and call it a day. Really, the most important part is this down here. So let's go ahead, display properties, flip normals. Let's turn on our transparency, alt tap this guy. Let's come in here. So now we did a total of 3.5 inflate from one tool to another. Gizmo. And that's about 0.46. So that's a lot better. And really the reason why we want that measurement is so A, it fits, but B, there's plenty of room for glue to fit in. When you think about gluing your parts together, unless you're working with magnets, but even then, working with magnets, you need to glue the magnets in. The thing to remember is that glue expands when it hardens. So you want room for the glue to not only spread between the parts, but also grab a hold of the part. And when it expands, it's gonna hold it and adhere to the part. So you want enough room to go ahead and that's 0.5 from the top to the bottom, which is good. So you want to make sure there's just enough room for expansion within the glue. All right, go ahead and touch that right there, flip that back. And like I said, we come in here, let's slow those down here, great, wonderful. like I said, and what you would want to do is come in here, trim dynamic BTD, come in and start cleaning a lot of this up. Now, some areas are going to be easier than others. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to touch on, which is once you've cut your tool and you like it and you're happy, right? First things first, save a different subtool before deleting folders in case you need to go back. But B, another trick to do is it should be welded pretty tight. If you go to auto groups, the polygroups, auto groups, and then Control Shift touch and swipe, just notice that when I swipe, there's something. That's because you will get a lot of little particles that will define your sculpt as not watertight. So if you end up noticing that, see like right here, there's little floaty particles. So just swipe that and then go ahead and go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. And that way, now you could touch that and there's nothing. So that's a way to make sure you don't have any floaty bits that a slicer or any other program would pick up and actually cause you issues, which happens a lot more than you think. It wouldn't make a ton of difference, but you could texture the key to give the glue more grip. Yeah, you're right. It wouldn't make too much of a difference because most of the time you'll have like sandpaper, or just take a little bit of take like a knife and like an X-Acto blade and score the key a little bit before gluing, and then it'll really grab hold of it. So anyway, so that's the process that I'm going to be doing, and this is still like 50% cut. So what I'm going to do is I will finish cutting this, and then when it's done, I'm going to release it to the wild, hopefully next week. And next week we're going to start a brand new sculpture, which I'm really excited. I'm scared excited about it, but it is this guy. If you're joining me now, next week we're going to be doing this Demon Slayer fan art sculpture. Natsuko and Tanjiro yeah, I'm really excited about this piece. Sandpaper, knife, that's old school model in there. Yeah, it is. So, alright guys. That is it for me today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed and learned a lot. Thank you so much for helping me out, Daisuke and Raytheon Studios, and so many people who were here helping give links and stuff and translating. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any further questions, please don't be afraid to reach out. And as always, guys, ZBrush Summit! Come on, we're doing it. We're doing it. Have a good rest of your day. It's very important. Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for everything. And let me drop a link one more time. If you are new to my streams, I would love to see you guys. This week I'm going to be studying anime sculpting a little bit more. I've done it a few times, but feel free to join me in the Discord. And yeah, again, if you guys are new, please subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff. You guys are amazing. Everybody here is just fantastic. And I will see you guys next week. Take it easy. Have a good one. Bye, 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 bye.